Everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and a continuing series, Sega Racing Renaissance, where I review every single arcade release 3D racing game Sega ever made in a retrospective fashion. And today we have Daytona 2, and I'm going to be mixing two games together, Daytona 2 and Power Edition, because they're very similar but do have some slight changes we need to talk about. Before we get too far involved, do me a huge favor, down below hit like, subscribe, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But we're starting off with the original Daytona 2, and this game is absolutely outstanding. It is a 10 out of 10 all day long, and it's a really interesting development history as well, because half of the team that made the original Daytona would go on to make Daytona 2, and some of the team from Virtual Fighter came over to help develop as well. Obviously, they don't really have much of an experience with arcade racing games, but they were extremely good at making 3D models, and this is one of the best looking 3D games on the Model 3, because this was on a later Step 2.1 revision of the hardware, because Model 3 was not a stationary item, it was a moving target, and it did improve over time. This is Daytona 2, but it plays differently, and that's because the entire physics handling and engine from the original game were discarded, and this was built from the ground up, and it has way more of a colorful, cartoony nature to it. This is a pure arcade game, even more so than the original Daytona. But I absolutely love it, that giant swinging pirate ship. The course has so much to see on the side, but I'm going to jump around from course to course and then show you how I finish later, because I want to talk about the design of this game, because I think the actual tracks are outstanding. This almost feels a little bit San Francisco rushy in nature without these shortcuts, weaving in and out of these buildings with all of these narrow turns. When you're playing this game well, when you're taking a clean line, it is spectacular, and this game, just like all the other Model 3 games, runs at a full 60 frames a second, and it feels blisteringly fast when you're doing everything. And I love seeing the city in the background as well. And this was another game that was supposed to come to the Dreamcast and was cancelled. It seems like no Model 3 game could ever make it home to a Dreamcast, especially if it was a racing game. But in Daytona 2, you gotta bump and run. You gotta knock off your enemies. You gotta bump into them to keep your corner if you need to. And you don't want to hit something like that. That was just stupid, honestly. But that's the fun thing about this game. I know I could do better, and I played it so much, I'm definitely going to go back and try to do better. But I love this tunnel, how the lighting changes on your car there. Parrot Jelly Beans, kind of a funny name, but hey, what are you going to do? You can race as the Hornet from the original Daytona in this game with a secret code, but I didn't end up doing that. I wanted to talk more about the new cars and the new features, but you'll see that this is a really long course. It's only 2 laps, and it is absolutely spectacular to play this, and you can string all of the laps together, or all the courses, into one mega race as well on Power Edition. I will show you that in a little bit. But again, Sega was a master at making arcade racing games, and they still are if you've seen some of the episodes on the more recent games. But Daytona 2 is pure spectacle, and of all the Daytonas, I'm going to say, in this retrospective at least, it's my favorite. And honestly, Daytona 3 is pretty janky, so it's really just a contest between Daytona 1 and this game right here. But again, just taking these corners, coming around the edges, bumping into people. I'm in 20th position. If I had a cleaner line, I could probably be doing better. But that's the thing about arcade racing games. It doesn't really matter if you're doing amazing or if you need to improve. So long as you're having fun and you're getting the sense of speed and spectacle, you'll enjoy it. But moving over to Power Edition really quickly, it's the same first course as the original Daytona 2, but they've taken the entire skylight off, so this oval feels a lot more like the original game. It's a small change to the upgraded ROM from the original Daytona 2, but it feels more like the game you remember. But the sound is spectacular as well. It's got a classic soundtrack that only Sega could do, so I'm going to let you listen for like 45 seconds, and I'll come back and talk more about the lovely game that is Daytona. Enjoy! Really fun soundtrack, but it's never going to live up to the original Daytona that has some of the most iconic tracks Sega's ever shown. But I love the cockpit view and the sense of speed. What I want to do is put Daytona 2 and Power Edition side by side to better illustrate the differences, because I'm not sure that it was actually necessary to remind people that much about the original Daytona. They could have just let this game sit on its own laurels. You'll see the original Daytona 2 ROM in the top left hand corner and Power Edition on the bottom right, and it is the same course. They've just changed the artwork completely and taken that dome off. It's still an oval, you're still going around the oval, but it just functions differently. And if you take a look at the bottom right of both screens, you're going to see that I'm basically on the same part of the track, but they feel completely different, and that's because they look completely different. And I actually like the spectacle of the original track more than I do Power Edition. I think it was actually a mistake on Sega's part to remove that graphic out and go towards more of a NASCAR feeling oval, but maybe they did some market research and maybe they found that people didn't like it as much. But interestingly, I am also driving better on the Power Edition. I think it's just down to sheer luck, because as far as the handling is concerned and as far as the gameplay is concerned, these games are identical. It just happens to be that these levels look kind of different, and that's a really strange change. Sega could have added a fourth track in here and upgraded the ROM versus just changing the artwork. I think that would have been a better use of their time, but of course you get a roulette wheel to enter in your initials, and Video Game Esoteric has got to go up there. But taking a look at the original ROM again, coming back to this race with the pirate ship, let's see how we finish. But again, Sega makes spectacular arcade racing games, and I will say it again, you can leave me a comment down below and tell me I'm wrong, but they are the #1 developer of arcade racing games in arcades. Sure, there's a lot of amazing games out there. Namco's a close second, but for my money, nobody ever did it better than Sega. And I really like how cartoony this game is as well, with that giant skeleton, with the train derailed off the track, all of the lighting effects. It's definitely poppy, and it's definitely otherworldly, and doesn't actually feel like a real environment. It's like we're just driving through an amusement park, because that's what we're doing. But I love that that's what's going on. I even love there's a sponsorship with GameWorks in there. It just makes you happy when you play it. And it looks like I got about 8th place so far. Let's see how I hold it together. Getting first place in this game is difficult. I am playing this at the normal difficulty, so that means the AI is set to normal, and the timer is fast for Sega, but not too fast. And Sega always gives you not enough time to finish anything if you make a mistake, unless you play on very easy, and we timed out in 8th there. But going back to the city course, this is definitely my favorite one in the game, even if I crashed directly into that wall there because I got bumped. All of the buildings, all of the signs, everything looks and plays spectacularly. And again, Model 3 was a powerhouse. Now it did run in 4x3, and I'm using Supermodel to be able to force this into full 16:9 and upscale it. But even in its original format, this game still holds up graphically. The developers did an amazing job, and I'm sure part of it's come down to the fact that some of the Virtual Fighter team helped with the modeling on this game, and Virtual Fighter had amazing models when it was in arcades in the 90s, and all of that talent comes over in full force with Daytona 2. So really, in conclusion, what I can say about Daytona 2 on the Model 3, whether you're playing the original ROM or the Power Edition, is you're just going to have a metric crap ton of fun when you are playing it. From start to finish, it is blazingly fast, the cornering is great, the level design is amazing, and it's just fun. And that's all I care about when we talk about arcade racing games, whether or not I'm having fun when I'm playing them. Something like Cruisin' USA on the Nintendo 64 is pretty janky compared to the arcade version, and even Cruisin' USA isn't the best arcade racing game ever, but I love playing it. I have a lot of fun when I play it, and that's all that matters. I remember seeing this game in arcades back in the day. I popped my quarters in, and I instantaneously fell in love, and I couldn't wait for it to come to Dreamcast, and it just didn't. And to this day, the only way to play this game is to either find an original arcade cabinet, buy a PCB and wire it up in your house, or emulate it. It's never been ported to anything, and damn it, Sega, if you watch this, and I know you don't, because why would you? Please bring it home to something, even give it to me in VR. But leave me a comment down below, tell me what you think about Daytona 2, because I think it's one of the best things Sega has ever done. I'll be back next week with more videos, but otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye bye.